Friends, good evening. I'm glad to see you all. Glad to hear you all. Today, we're going to discuss a very important topic. Why does the body actually speak to us through symptoms? Why do we need this pain? Why do we need this suffering? Do we choose this pain and suffering ourselves? And in general, why does this happen? Why do we have to carry all this inside us and suffer because of it? So, that's why we're going to talk about this topic now. I've prepared some content for you. Plus, I'll be happy, of course, to answer your questions and highlight some points for you right now that will help you look at yourself from a completely different perspective. And of course, I'll announce what event we have coming up that you absolutely must join. So, let's probably start from the very beginning. Let's start with Hippocrates, if I can put it that way. We all want our bodies to work like a machine. Like, just take it to the service station, right? Swap out the organs, change the oil. I don't know, pour in some windshield washer fluid. And that's it, off you go again. Just take a pill, put on some ointment or patch, and everything's fine. And it would be wonderful if a person were a robot, a machine. I think it would work that way, but the human body is much more complicated. For example, I once had a man come to me for a consultation, and we were discussing it. I was showing him how his issues were connected to psychosomatics, pointing out where those moments were for him. We were doing a diagnosis, and he said to me, Vadym, he says, it's terrible. I go to doctors, and they can't do their job properly, with quality. They can't give me a diagnosis. I've already spent a ton of money, all sorts of things, and nothing has changed at all. And he says, I have a car service station, I repair cars. He says, if I do my job poorly, I come back and fix it for free. But why doesn't medicine work like that? Why does one doctor tell me one thing? Another tells me something else, and a third says something completely unclear. And in general, can't you understand that I'm sick? To that, I told him exactly what I just told you. A person is not a machine. A person invented the machine, and a person is much more complex than a machine. Do you agree with me? Give me a thumbs up. And why are we going to start with Hippocrates? Because even before our era, yes, since the time of Hippocrates, doctors, medics, people who treated others started saying that you can't just treat a person with potions. It's important to consider what kind of environment a person lives in, their lifestyle, their behavior, their temperament, their emotions, their feelings, right? What did Hippocrates give us, right? That's our temperament, melancholic, choleric, phlegmatic, and so on. So, since that time, we've already understood that people are different. They fall into certain types. Roughly speaking, what is good for a phlegmatic person might not be good for a choleric person. His followers began to study these processes, yes, delving even deeper. One of his students described how the internal organs react to emotions. For example, that fear lives in the kidneys. This has been known for a very long time. Or, for instance, Avicenna, yes, his follower, a famous doctor at the time, told us that it's impossible to treat a person if you don't also work with their emotions. Emotions directly affect the internal organs. Do they have nothing better to do? Why did they write treatises about this? Why did they talk about it? Why? All of this exists. It's documented. Otherwise, they could have just prescribed potions and done their job. No, it's because people wanted to help, because a comprehensive approach is needed. That's why, since ancient times, everyone knew this. All of it was actually known. But then, as research started to go deeper, which is a good thing, we shifted towards evidence-based medicine and left our psyche, our perception, in the realm of philosophy. Light, go ahead, discuss. Philosophize there as much as you want. But here, you need to actually perform surgery, do transfusions, do something concrete. And for a while, of course, that set us back. But medicine, on the contrary, began to flourish. And now, everyone is talking about a comprehensive approach. We can't treat a person as something separate from their feelings, from their emotions. There are now a lot of studies showing that stress affects the whole body, the immune system, the functioning of internal organs, the medications you take, glucose release, and so on. That's why it's impossible not to study this and not to work with it. And of course, such great figures as, for example, Freud, who was the first to introduce us to the concept of conversion syndrome. What does that mean? It means that when a psychological emotion is not expressed, it becomes somatized. The energy turns into a physical symptom and manifests as some kind of illness, often out of nowhere, in a place where a person shouldn't be getting sick. Doctors just shrug and say, there's nothing wrong with him. There aren't any indications, for example, to see a neurologist, but he still has these symptoms. By the way, raise your hand if you've experienced this. When you go to the doctor and they say, I don't know, you don't have any bacteria, why should I treat you? Why does everything hurt? Go see a neurologist, make an appointment, with a head doctor. Alright, okay, I get it, that's it. Can you hear me now, Telegram channel? I forgot to turn off that button. I'm talking, and you're all silent. You are writing, it's just that my screen froze here. Can you all hear and see me now? There, you can hear me now, great. That's why Dr. Freud, the Chicago 7. Franz Alexander, actually the one who came up with the term psychosomatics, right? They created their own institute, a group of doctors and psychologists who started researching why people actually get sick. And even in official medicine, this Chicago 7 was introduced. 7 diseases that clearly have a psychosomatic component. That is, you can't just treat them with pills. You need to involve our mind as well. And of course, the followers, the researchers, and of course Dr. Hamer, who actually described all our internal organs and all the conflicts, which we can now observe, work with, and understand that practically every disease has a psychosomatic component. Yes. And what if, on the contrary, the test results are bad? If, on the contrary, the test results are bad, that says something. It means that you are in conflict, and your body is basically stuck in place. So, the first thing I wanted to tell you is that the knowledge that a person is not just a machine, not just a robot, has existed for a long time. Little by little, we are piecing all of this together, and now we have some understanding of how it all actually works. I've been involved in psychosomatics for more than 10 years, and I actually came to psychosomatics from body practices when I was working with the body, and I saw that you can't fully help people. You work well with them, they leave, but then they come back, and they don't really have any results. What's going on here? Wait a second, there's no video. Hey, me. Oh God. Alright, the video is on. The video is on. No video. How about now? It should be working. So, the first time I remember, I was at a conference about the body. I came to the conference, and they started talking about psychosomatics, saying that our illnesses serve some purpose, that there's some message in them, some kind of meaning. Honestly, I didn't get the point at all. I was like, what? What do you mean? I was like, what could possibly be good about being sick? You're falling apart, you're in pain, you can't live, you can't eat, you can't, build relationships. What kind of meaning could there be in that? How could there possibly be any benefit to some illness? Honestly, it even sounds kind of cruel, doesn't it? But if we look deeper, there actually is a meaning. What is it? The meaning of survival. Because for our body, our psyche, our subconscious, the most important thing for us is to survive at any cost. And that's how our world is set up. In the past, the threats were real. Floods, predators, wild animals. And for millions of years, survival programs have been hardwired into us. But now we live in relatively, let's say, vanilla conditions. There aren't any real threats like that, right? Well, there are very few of them, let's say, compared to the past. But now there's a lot of this virtual stress. When I sit at home and I'm afraid that something might happen out there, that I'll be abandoned, people will turn away from me, or I'll get fired. This is that stress out of nowhere, when nothing is actually happening, but inside your head there's this whirlwind, like something terrible is about to happen. You feel anxious, scared, uneasy. Who feels like this? Raise your hand. And you try to switch your focus to something positive. You try to believe in something good. You try to do some practices, breathe it out or something, but nothing really helps completely. You just can't do it. Why? Because you're not getting to the root. You're not digging deep enough. So, basically, our body communicates with us through symptoms, inflammation, and illnesses, really just to get us to pay attention to ourselves, not to run away, but to start feeling where we betray ourselves, where we turn away from ourselves, where we haven't fully experienced certain feelings and emotions. And today, I want to go over with you some specific steps and stages, what a symptom might be trying to tell us. Grab your pens and write this down, or just try to remember it. I want you to really engage with this. In a moment, I'll give you a certain list, and I want you to figure out who you are in this list, what applies to you, okay? So, once again, illnesses are connected to our unconscious reactions. In other words, the body is trying to save us from something. Yes, it's a virtual threat. It's not real. Why do I say virtual? Because if it were real, you would actually do something. You'd run away. You'd somehow save yourself. But since there's nothing to escape from, and it's all just in my head, that's when the body kicks in. So, the first thing, a symptom in our body speaks instead of our feelings. Right. It's better to have a sore throat than to hurt someone or say no. Give me a little wave. It's better for my chest to hurt, I don't know, than to admit that I'm guilty of something, or, more likely, to admit that I'm not guilty. Right. The feeling of fear, the feeling of resentment, the feeling of anger, which maybe, yes, shows up on my skin. I get angry, I get irritated because maybe I'm being forced to do things I don't want to do in life. Right. So, what is your SYMP? What is your symptom telling you about? I see some comments. You're chatting here. I can't read everything in time. About a comprehensive approach. Look, when we talk about psychosomatics, of course we're talking about a comprehensive approach. No one is saying don't go to doctors. That would be silly. If someone tells you that, run away from that person. Grab your things and run. We're talking about a comprehensive approach. But unfortunately, if we focus only on one side and just work with the symptoms, yes, and don't include psychosomatics, then unfortunately, illnesses come back or don't go away at all. That's why I work with psychosomatics. That's why people come to me. And if we look back, say 7 years ago, the people who came to me had already been to everyone else. This used to be, let's say, the last place people would come to. But now, people come in advance, they study, they work on themselves so that they don't get sick in the future and aren't afraid of their symptoms. So, first of all, my symptom is connected to a suppressed feeling, a suppressed emotion. For example, a man comes in who has gastritis, a very serious case. He suffers from pain, everything hurts, yes. Obviously, he's told that nothing can be cured anymore. There are already problems, and soon he'll be developing an ulcer. And when he starts working through his feelings in my program, it turns out he has a very strong sense of self-disgust and guilt, which he can neither accept nor digest, because he used to like to drink and would drink quite a lot, and he hurt both his wife and his child. And then there was a situation where he was ridiculed, and he saw himself from the outside, and he realized that he couldn't change it. What a terrible person he was, how badly he behaved, right? And that feeling of guilt, that's when it got imprinted in him. And yes, after that he actually started drinking less, but he still drank from time to time. And this feeling of a hangover, let's say, was a kind of trigger for him that brought up this sense of guilt. And as soon as he came into contact with this feeling and released it from his body, first, he calmed down, he accepted himself, his relationship with his wife improved, his relationship with his daughter got better, and his stomach pains disappeared. If anyone has issues with guilt, type the word I, okay? So the first symptom, instead of the feelings we haven't experienced, haven't expressed, have suppressed or silenced within ourselves. And now our body wants us to go through these feelings, to let them out, not to hold them inside, right? And as a rule, people have this state of keeping everything inside, not letting go, not releasing, not experiencing it, right? That's the kind of state. Yes. The second point. A symptom instead of action. A symptom instead of action. When I've done something in my life, right? And now I feel guilty about it. It would have been better if it hadn't happened. It would have been better if it hadn't happened. Who here has ever felt that way? Write in the chat now. I'll quickly rejoin. Or it's a state when I couldn't do something. An action, a gesture, a movement, right? Like there was some moment where I just couldn't do it. a feeling of helplessness, and now guilt about it. Why couldn't I do it? Why did it turn out this way, right? Or I want to take some step. I want to do something in my life towards change, but for some reason I can't. Maybe I'm afraid, or I forbid myself, right? Right away, write down what resonates with you from this. So, the primary symptom is often like an action that was not fully completed, or perhaps was done, but there's this profound sense of regret about it, a lingering feeling. Okay, I re-entered the Telegram channel. Yes, I feel it. It's scary. So, inside, I want to take this action, but I can't. I'm afraid something might happen. But I also can't stop thinking about wanting change. And that's why a person gets stuck between these two states. So, what else can happen to a person? First, they might start having pain in the hip joint. The joint starts to give way because there's no action being taken, right? The knees might react, the feet might react. I feel guilty because of my actions, or because of my inaction. Yes, that's exactly how it works. That's exactly how it works. The simplest example, right? A friend writes to me. She says, I have inflammation in my hand. Yeah, I go to the doctor. They say everything's fine, nothing's wrong. But I can't, it hurts. I can't live like this. I tell her, well, is there someone you can't let go of? What's going on? I say, so you're a young girl, I ask. What's up with the guy? Did you break up or something? The love is over. She just bursts into tears. So that jerk, he did this, he left me, and I just can't accept it. I can't let him go. You see? Actions I can't bring myself to do, so my body tries to hold on to it. Or maybe the situation is more serious. A man whose mother is sick, and half his body is basically paralyzed. That is, he's just tense all over. He says, I can't let her go. I know my mom is going to die soon, but I can't accept it. I can't let it go. And now the body is already in this spasm, you see? So the symptom is like an action I can't take. Or maybe I did take it but blame myself for it, right? Or I can't let go. The musculoskeletal system reacts to this very strongly. Right. React right away, right away. Something's up with our Telegram channel today. It's acting up. Alright, let's move on. A symptom as a defense mechanism. A symptom as a defense mechanism. The simplest thing we can talk about is our CH, our children. When a child, wave your hand if your kids are sick, right? If they're sick. When a child is constantly sick, when something like that is going on. Let me give you a few examples. A child is constantly sick, always catching colds. Or you cure them of something. Say, you cure their allergy, and then something new comes up. So it's like a vicious circle. I'll explain how to let go in a moment. Natasha, for now just write down whatever resonates with you. So, a vicious circle, MMM, and the child's illness becomes a way to attract attention. Attracting attention. Pay attention to me. I matter, I am needed. Stop getting lost in your fears. Stop sorting out your relationships. Stop running off to your job. This whole career thing. I'm a child. I need love. I need attention. So the first thing, yes, is what you need to think about, right? The child lacks attention, lacks love and support, because that's very important. If we're talking about adults, yes, what kind of defense mechanism can illness be? It's when we work from morning till night. Workaholics, hello to all of you. I work without weekends. I don't have time to take a vacation. I don't have time to take a day off. And then you end up lying in bed. Your temperature is 40. Your body is red. You can't get out of bed. And yeah. And the biggest paradox is that you can't get up, but you actually feel good about it. Who here has experienced that? That inside, you actually feel okay. At least now I allow myself to just lie in bed and rest, even though in everyday life I never let myself do that. That's why illness is like, you know, a red warning light that says stop, calm down. Where are you rushing off to? Slow down, right? So it's a kind of protection, and here's an example for you. If we're talking, for example, I'm not just making this up, I'm telling you real cases. Like with a panic attack, for instance, a person starts experiencing certain symptoms, these fears that manifest physically in the body, a panic attack, and no one can cure the person. They try this, they try that, but no treatment seems to help. Why is that? Because the panic attack is actually saving the person from having to deal with what's going on in their life. For example, there's a woman. She's married, there's no love, she doesn't want to have sex with her husband, but she can't leave. She has no money, no support. And so her physical symptom is helping her cope with something in her life. In other words, it gives her some kind of support, a crutch, an opportunity to avoid dealing with what's actually important in her life and what she really should be addressing. You know, Freud was actually the first to describe this. So, once again, the person does this unconsciously. There's just some situation in my life that I don't want to face. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to solve it. And as it seems to me, subjectively, I just can't solve it in any way. And then the body says, here you go, here's some autoimmune disease, here's some process. Deal with that. Oh, I'm so sick, no one can cure me. I have a very serious illness. That's just how I am. When? Work on relationships? No, I can't right now. I'm sick at the moment. Work. Oh, I can't work right now. I'm sick at the moment. Notice this. Often, people like this form a connection in their minds. I can't do anything important right now. Lose weight. Work on relationships. Work. Or anything else. Because I have this kind of miracle illness that no one can figure out or cure. Or maybe the problem is something else. Maybe I just don't want to deal with what's important in my life. And in this way, my mind is protecting me. Because when there's something inside, again, it's a survival mechanism. When there's a problem in my life that I feel is unsolvable, anxiety rises, fear rises. And for my psyche, it's the same as if some mammoth, or I don't know, a predator was attacking me. So in this case, this strategy works as a way to survive. Yes, physically I'm getting sick, I'm falling apart, but psychologically it's easier for me. Psychologically, I don't have to deal with something in my life. And it's a bit harder to treat someone like that, because they often don't see it and won't admit it. They say, everything is perfect for me. If it weren't for this illness, I'd just change the whole world right now. What are you telling me? I have a perfect marriage, a perfect job, everything is perfect. Even though that's far from the truth. And inside, the person feels something completely different. And they'd gotten so used to suppressing their desires and feelings that they don't even realize they're not living the life they actually want. And this discomfort keeps growing and growing, and in the end, it really hits the body. Yes, a symptom has a feeling, a symptom as an action, a symptom as a defense, and a symptom as a way to release tension. How does this show up in real life, when a person lives in a vicious circle for a very long time? I must. Endure, fight, for example, yes, that's the story. A woman, after her marriage, her husband took everything, nothing was left, she's alone with the kids, no money, no support, no foundation. She's carrying everything on her poor, dear shoulders. She keeps dragging on, dragging on, dragging on, dragging on. A new man has already appeared. It seems like everything is fine now, the situation has been resolved. But as they say, on the old yeast, the psyche keeps reacting. I have to cope, I have to survive. The tension, the thyroid starts to fail. Yes, one symptom after another. And at some point, they just fall apart. That's it, the body is exhausted. And the person starts getting sick with one thing, then another, then a third. But this didn't happen just yesterday. In other words, there was a long process of exhaustion leading up to this. Tell me, wave your hand if this is you, who for a long time in your life kept dragging something along, kept carrying it, thinking it would just go away on its own, it would resolve itself. You kept running away, not wanting to deal with it. And then suddenly, that's it. You can't afford not to deal with it anymore. That's it. Your body just stops. That red warning light that was blinking, now it's done. It's like when the light in your car keeps blinking. Fill up the tank, fill up the tank, fill up the tank, fill up the tank. And then suddenly, bam, the car stops, and you're in the middle of the desert and you say, oh, I need to fill up the car. But there's no gas station. and there won't be one anytime soon, and now you're stuck there. That's how it works. That's why I say, friends, come train and learn with me before something bad happens. And if it already has, then you need to run. If you have any symptoms, if you feel any discomfort in your body or in your life, that already means you're not feeling yourself. You're not understanding yourself. You're suppressing yourself somewhere in those moments. You get it? Yes. Which of these 4 strategies that I mentioned resonated with you? It happened to me like that, yes? Me. Yes, I'm waving both hands. Yes. This is a very important point, guys. Let me say it now, and then I'll answer your questions before I forget. What I just told you, what resonates with you, almost everyone experiences this. Why? Psychosomatics isn't something special. Sometimes people think, oh, for me to get a psychosomatic illness, it has to be the end of the world or something. I don't know, like someone has to die or something. No! Believe me, these are everyday moments in your life, where stress builds up like a snowball, where I don't feel myself, where I don't understand myself, where I'm afraid of myself, where I betray myself, where I go against myself. It all slowly accumulates. And then, bang! And you can't do anything about it anymore, because now you need help, now you need support. So, today the test drive has started, the week before the Foundations module. I specifically created this week-long course for you, so that you could feel and try out what Vadym's programs are like, how they work, what psychotechnics he uses, what Vadym's curators are, what the format is, how the platform works, how the process goes. I've recorded 3 of the most important lessons for you. You can still join right now. The first lesson. Why does the body speak for us? There, we go into detail about what conversion syndrome is, the stages of stress, and what types there are. Why is there such a thing as beneficial stress and negative stress, right? What is a bioshock? And how do emotions transfer into the body? And in the first lesson, you get your first psychotechnique, feeling your own body. What is it that's really sitting inside me? So this is the first contact, the first interaction with yourself. In the second lesson, it's about diagnostics, right, where you look at first, what forbidden emotions you have, what you forbid in yourself, what you're afraid of, what specific stress you're stuck in, where you have this chronic stress, right? There will be a diagnostic assessment there. We look at what separations there have been, what moments. So I give you a kind of diagnostic there, and then there's a psychotechnique, a working through process. This is a meeting with your inner image. How do I perceive myself? What is sitting inside me? We can always diagnose everything with you. Everything is there, right? Vadym gives you these techniques. And the third lesson is about where we betrayed ourselves. What is betrayal? And how does it show up in our lives? There will be a diagnostic of your life areas so you can take a look at yourself. The fact that your body is screaming is not a coincidence. If there is some kind of mental, psychological, or physical discomfort, it means your body has been screaming about it for a long time already. So you will diagnose yourself, and there will be a practice to help you let go of this pain. I choose myself, right? So these are 3 important lessons. Then, next Monday, we'll meet at a webinar where together we'll create a health map. What steps do you need to take next in your life? This event costs just 2,000 rubles. I made it accessible for absolutely everyone. Absolutely everyone. 3 lectures, 3 psychotechniques, and working with a curator. The curator takes on a maximum of 1 or 2 people, so you'll get personal attention and communication. And most importantly, when you complete this week, I'm giving you this opportunity. I'll choose one person, yes, to whom I'll give the annual program. Who's heard of or knows about my annual program? It's a distillation of all the techniques. The annual program consists of 5 modules. There's a fundamentals module, a family psychosomatics module, body systems, child psychosomatics, and money psychosomatics. It's 7 months of training. Well, with the breaks, it takes about a year. It's over 90 hours of content, and you get more than 50 practices. You receive methodological guides. Basically, it's like a new kind of education for you, an education about yourself. You work with a curator for a whole year. That means they help you process your emotions, they help you, teach you to feel yourself. So it's a deep, self-exploration, and someone will win this absolutely free. How do you like that opportunity? Let's put some pluses in the chat. What do you need to do for this? Just come to the test drive week, do the practices, open up to the curators, be active, and then, based on your testing, the dean will choose one person. Please. There you go. I'm intentionally making the test drive price as affordable as possible so that there are more healthy and happy people. Believe me, in just a week, you can change a lot, turn your life completely upside down. Before I used to do an open week format, where I would just let people join the course for a week, and during that week, people managed to get rid of some pretty serious health issues. So, this is a similar format, where you come and do real practices, real tools, so you can actually understand how it works. Cool, right? There you go. La 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 la. Let's go. Now I'm ready to answer your questions. It's already happened. It's okay that it happened. What's important is to keep moving forward. Ludmilla, you're doing great. What are you concerned about right now? What issues are there at the moment? You can write in the chat right now. I'm reading your questions now. Go ahead and write. Who is already with us for the test drive week? Wave your hand, put a plus sign in the chat. Painful periods. It's all very simple. When we talk about psychosomatics, what are periods? It's the ability to be a woman, to start a family, to have a child. In other words, to fulfill yourself as a woman. If your periods are painful, it means there is an unconscious fear of having a child, of having children, of starting a family, of growing up, of moving forward. What could be at the root of the problem? First, it's the moment when you found out you had your period. Maybe that's where the trigger started, that it's dirty, it's unpleasant, no one warned you. And for you, it was a shock, a stress. Now every month it's like a trigger. So, how I perceived my period is the first thing. Second, it could be a childhood trauma, when there was a lot of stress, arguments in the family. And now, on a subconscious level, being an adult simply feels dangerous. Starting a family, giving birth, having children, it feels dangerous, because I don't want to go through the same pain I experienced as a child. That's the second point. The third is when there's a negative experience, an abortion, a miscarriage, yes, a loss of a child, whether it happened to me or to someone in my family, my mother, my grandmother, yes. And this pain, still unprocessed, is still there. These are the three most common situations. Which of these resonates with you? And of course, there's the fear of having children, the fear of not being able to handle it, of not being able to give them support or guidance. That's the most important thing. Which of these resonates with you? Write it down. Oh. When we talk about endometriosis, several people have mentioned it. Look, from a psychosomatic perspective, endometriosis is again about the topic of pregnancy, about starting a family, but through the lens of fear, that I can't trust, that I lack support and security. In other words, I don't feel safe around a man. That's why this topic needs to be explored thoroughly. It could be an issue with your father, or it could be about betrayal, resentment, humiliation, or insults from a man. Where I was hurt, where I was used emotionally or physically. And now there's this fear, so the body protects itself. These issues absolutely need to be worked through and dissolved before going for surgery. No, of course, have the surgery if it's indicated, but it doesn't matter whether you've had it or not. You need to work through these emotions and feelings, because otherwise your body will keep running the same program, trying to protect you. And possibly, there could be recurrences. That's why people often say, I had the surgery, but everything came back again. Yes, but you keep feeling the same way. Right. And what if your periods are still painful after giving birth? How is that connected? Do you think childbirth somehow solves your psycho-emotional state? Or what? I don't get it. Why do you see a connection here? There is no connection here. Childbirth doesn't take away your fears. Childbirth is not a psychotherapist for you. Sometimes conflicts do get resolved, yes, when a person matures, but that means the program is even more deeply rooted. The fear is still there. So, some kind of rejection or non-acceptance. Right. You also mentioned breast pain. So, breast pain, again, it's like this. Well, I've noticed that you mention a lot of symptoms. Again, this is anxiety, an anxious state where you worry about your loved ones and family. Be sure to come to the test drive, because during the webinar, we'll be discussing these things. I'll be breaking down why we take responsibility for our loved ones, why this happens. For example, eczema on your hands started during pregnancy, and now this eczema has been with you for 5 years, all year round. So, what does eczema indicate? It means I lost contact with someone very important, that during pregnancy, or even before pregnancy, there was a stressful situation involving separation from someone significant. And that's where those feelings got recorded. And now the trigger is constantly replaying. Who are you missing contact with, right? Where is there a lack of support, attention, love, or care? And nothing gets resolved, so it all stays. Look, Olechka writes, she worked through her eczema. It went away, but then it came back. Olechka, you see, you kind of learned a bit, but didn't fully absorb everything, so you need to keep going. Look, the eczema came back. Eczema doesn't just come back. You got into a conflict and are reacting again. I talked about this in my lectures and I always mention it. Look, this is a very important point. Thank you for writing this. Look, I had eczema. It went away, and then it came back, the same one. But it's not that the eczema came back, or went away, or returned. It's your reaction to life. I was reacting, say, to my family. I sort of worked through my reaction. It went away, but my life goes on. I ended up in a stressful situation again. For example, at work, and my skin reacted. That's all there is to it. We analyze every single reaction. What emotion is there? What conflict was triggered? We relive these feelings, and then it lets go. The mechanism is the same, it works. Olechka, come join the test drive week, refresh your knowledge. Or rather, gain new knowledge. I haven't taught this before. So, superovulations, 2 ovulations a month, which is why the cycle is long. But you already have kids and don't want any more. That's clear. You have children and don't want more. But most likely, look, your body still wants to get pregnant, so to speak. What does that mean? Look, the opposite state is an unprocessed loss, an unprocessed grief. Someone was lost, someone is gone. It could be a breakup, or someone actually passed away, or maybe early abortions, miscarriages. So either it comes from your family line, or from your own family. Who haven't you mourned for? Who haven't you grieved over? That's what resonates here, right? So, with liver problems, it seems like I'm not angry, but I pile a lot on myself. I have to, I must. Look, the liver. There are hints of anger there, since that's where our gallbladder is, right? But the liver mostly reacts to a lack of resources. So this is the state when I'm afraid of being left without money. I'm afraid of being left without means to live. The money will run out. My fear is that I'll end up on the street, eating rotten bananas from the trash. This fear sits inside me. It might come from my childhood. It might be rooted in my family line, and that's why the liver reacts. And this sense of obligation, might actually be a consequence of me running away because I'm afraid to stay, you see? Does that resonate with you? So, the first period, violence in the family. Yes, that's exactly it. This is the most common situation. Come to the test drive, and we'll sort it out together. Endometriosis because of a man's betrayal. Of course. So, the detachment of the endometrium happens because I can't trust. I don't feel safe around a man. And unfortunately, it always pains me when a woman is written off, told she has endometriosis. That's it. Instead of actually figuring things out, instead of giving her more confidence, more security, so that this supposed threat, which isn't even there anymore, stops saving her, so to speak. No one is hurting her now, but those past feelings are still there. The body protects itself in this way. You need to fully experience them. You need to let them go. How do you fully experience them? There's a specific method that I teach. You start learning it during the test drive. Within a week, you already start to understand it. Then I continue to explain how to do this in the basics course. It's a 6-week program. How to find your emotions and feelings. How to work with them. How to discover what conflict lies behind those emotions and feelings. How to bring it out and transform it. It's a specific method. You can't understand this logically. You can't grasp it in 5 minutes. It's a skill that develops over the course of a month. Yes, when you work with a mentor, when you work with a group, yes, you make progress. Yes, here Oksana writes, they did an ECG. The fear is overwhelming. Of course, it's fear. The heart, let me put it this way. The heart. People who are especially sensitive, who worry about everyone, react to stress with their heart. For example, the problem might not even be mine, but I still worry that this person won't be able to handle it, that they won't cope. It's like I take on the stress myself, worrying about someone else. If you have this trait, write one in the chat, Oksana. Second, if we talk about somatics, specifically about conflict, the heart is our home, it's our family, it's arguments, it's worry, it's anxiety, it's the fear that something terrible might happen, right? That's where we worry, overthink, and get anxious. And of course, it's also about losing your territory. In other words, it's the state when a person has lost something important. A breakup, family, business, work, he's lost something valuable in his life. Allergic rhinitis. The worst thing you can do is get hooked on pills that end up causing dependency. The best thing you can do, Daria, is to come and work through your condition with us in the program. What is the nose? Yes, what function does it have? We smell things. The nose warms the air, right? It turns cold air into warm. It disinfects it, right? And through the nose, we sense the atmosphere and the surrounding space. All of this needs to be translated into psychosomatic language. What kinds of conflicts do we have here? First, when something just outright stinks. So, there might be someone next to me who stinks. Maybe he hasn't showered in a month, right? And I can't tell him, you're smelly. I don't want to sit next to you. I thought I'd just keep quiet and put up with it. After a while, I end up with a runny nose, or well, I might lose my sense of smell. Or maybe that person starts saying nasty things about me. Right, so these are some unpleasant moments. In other words, it's a stench conflict. I don't want to breathe the same air as this person. I don't like this relationship, it stinks. I'm sitting with a friend, having some coffee. And she's like, sniffling with her nose. I say to her, hey, why do you keep sniffling? I say, you're really getting on my nerves. And she's like, well, I have this allergy. Or maybe it's not an allergy. And she starts explaining something. I say, don't give me that. I say, what are you telling me all this for? I say, go tell that nonsense to someone else. I ask, so what happened? What's stuck in your nose? She says, anger. I say, anger at who? At my boyfriend. So, over the weekend, she was supposed to not meet up with her boyfriend. You know, some kind of fling. You know what boys and girls get up to. Use your imagination. But he bailed, yeah. Something unpleasant happened. So now she's angry. and she knows he's lying to her. She knows he's deceiving her, but she pretended to believe him. But deep down, she can't fool herself. So as we dig into the situation, it turns out that deep down she wants to get into a relationship, but she's afraid, because there's her mom's story, a dramatic one with a man. So there's this program running in her head that men are bad, they hurt you, they cause pain, and that's why she keeps lying to herself. Like, there's this guy, she knows he has someone else, he's in another relationship, and yet sometimes she lets him be around her. But at the same time, of course, she doesn't like it. And so, this anger basically exposes that very issue. As soon as she talks all this out, really feels it, her nose starts to breathe again. In other words, her allergic reaction goes away. So, before you torture your poor little nose, you need to figure out what in your life actually stinks. Or here's another story. A guy, right? He says, I have allergies. To what? To everything. He has an allergy to life. He's done all tests, and now he's living on medication. I ask, so what's going on? And he says, the allergy started as soon as I moved back in with my parents. He's already a grown guy. Everything's fine. But the circumstances turned out in such a way that he has to live with his parents for now, because there's renovation going on in his apartment, and there are, well, certain other circumstances. He's not a mama's boy. He's a normal guy. Everything's fine with him. But he just needs to stay with his parents for a while. But his parents, well, they have their own crazy antics at home, and he feels embarrassed about them in front of society. But he can't do anything about it, so it stinks. It's a conflict of stench. In other words, I can't run away or get away from it. That's what my nose reacts to. Do you see the cause and effect relationships here? If this resonates with you, give a thumbs up wave. So stop labeling yourself as having some kind of allergy that you can't cure. Start thinking along the lines that my body is trying to tell me something that I don't understand. Yes, I'm not familiar with this. I haven't studied it. So what I need is to go to someone who understands this. Like Vadym, for example, for a week-long test drive, and in just a week, yes, changed my life. I could go spend 2,000 or so to buy yet another batch of pills, right, for my nose. Or I could come and start figuring myself out, and then not have to buy pills anymore. Just as an example for you. So, cysts in many organs, they're different conflicts, because different organs speak about different things, right? The breast, the uterus, the spine. So, the spine is a conflict of powerlessness, where I can't handle it, I can't cope. So, it's a lot of responsibility, pressure, powerlessness, plus a sense of guilt about it, right? And if we're talking about the uterus, it's the inability to fulfill yourself as a woman, to get pregnant, to build a family, right? That's this feeling of feminine powerlessness. The breast. It's about responsibility for others. Anxiety, worry. That's why these are different conflicts that need to be worked through. Okay? So, a Bartholin's gland cyst. In this case, we can say that the cyst acts as a kind of defense mechanism against a certain episode in your life when you felt defiled, dirty, tainted. Maybe it's a love story involving a man with sexual experience, right? Where, let's say, I don't know, it could be a physical situation or maybe a mental one, where I was somehow dragged through the mud, you know? So I feel disgust toward this person, but let's say I still had sex with him afterwards, and now my body is defending itself. My skin is defending itself, you know? And because there are triggers, these states keep replaying. That's why you need to calm down here. Calm yourself and work through this feeling. We'll have a third lesson during the test drive week, where I betrayed myself. That lesson is practically written just for you. And with the cyst, you'll go and figure out exactly where you betrayed yourself. Okay? So, heartburn appeared a year ago. Olesya writes, just today I was telling a story exactly about this. Let me tell you. Look, heartburn. What's happening? What happens is that the stomach releases gastric juice into the esophagus. Different pH, different sensations. Why does this happen? It's a question of the sphincter. Let's put it this way. If you were to ask me, As a body therapist, what the problem is, the first thing would be to relax the diaphragm, to work with the vagus nerve, right? But if you ask me as a psychosomatic specialist, what's the issue? The problem is that you're carrying around a huge grudge, a deep resentment. As a rule, people who have esophageal diseases get offended very easily. And yet they're convinced that they don't get offended at all, that they're sweethearts, that they're good people. But from the outside, you can see it's a disaster, it's just a mess. This person is resentful, unpleasant, always blaming others, bad neighbors, the government is wrong, and so on. Because inside, they're holding on to resentment. At some point, they were deeply hurt, someone really wounded them, and that feeling got suppressed, but it stayed right here. So what does that mean? It's a piece I can't accept, something I refuse to agree with, and of course, this situation gets repressed. Now the person just looks at the world around them and sees some kind of injustice everywhere. Feels like people are always treating them unfairly, that someone is always hurting them. And it just seems like people, in general, are dishonest. Tell me, Alesh, does this resonate with you? Are there people in your life who, as you see it, treat you badly? Yes. If we can't breathe deeply, that's actually the very first sign that a person is in a state of fear. I can't take a breath. So, it's a spasm of the deep breathing muscles. It's a state of fear. Remember when we, say, plunge into cold water or something like that, we feel this fear. These are suppressed emotions, of course. So you haven't recovered from the stress. You're stuck in it. You're trapped there. Olesya doesn't want to write to us for some reason. Constant sore throats in childhood, and now the lymph nodes are enlarged. Is this all one conflict? Am I understanding correctly? No, it's not just one conflict. These are different conflicts. There was a certain story in your childhood, Oksana. You lacked a sense of safety, support from your mother, and that's why you had sore throats. Right. Because that's, let's say, an organ of the immune system. And the fact that your lymph nodes are inflamed now could be a completely different story. Here you need to, you didn't specify which lymph nodes. We have a lot of lymph nodes. Which ones do you mean? Are you talking about these lymph nodes here? This could be a situation where there's some kind of frontal fear, some threat to my life, where I can't accept something in my life. You need to figure out which lymph nodes are involved. So these are two different conflicts. So, Elika, you wrote something earlier, but I missed your message. You get occasional stabbing pain in your heart when you breathe in, like it's being pierced by a needle. Well, what you're describing is most likely a case of intercostal neuralgia, because, as far as I remember, you mentioned you're a young woman. So, it's a spasm of the intercostal muscles. So this is a current state of stress, like I got scared. Something is happening in my life. In other words, these are suppressed emotions. The spasm comes from the diaphragm. Yes. Now, rheumatoid arthritis, a slight pain in the right thumb. Let's talk about rheumatoid arthritis. Is it possible to cure it with Psychosomatics? Yes. And you need to do it. The sooner you start doing it, the faster you'll see results. The longer you wait, thinking it will go away on its own, or that you'll handle it yourself, or that you'll just go to some miracle therapist for one session and they'll cure you of everything, the more you're actually making things worse for yourself. I have a lot of students, yes, who have great results with arthritis, where people go into remission, live their lives, find jobs, their joints move, everything's good. But it's work, because there's a very strong, intense fear and a serious problem with self-esteem. Because it's a motor conflict. There you have to work through issues of upbringing, childhood. You need to sort out where right now I can't let something go, can't do something. That's where the motor conflict is, yes. And it's different for everyone. And there are huge problems with self-esteem because there wasn't enough love or attention. Plus, when they say that it can't be cured, and add the fear that it could end badly, all of that, all of these limitations, make the condition worse. That's why I would recommend going for a year-long program here, or at the very least, the basics, plus my systems, in order to solve this issue. Because there are a lot of topics that need to be worked through there. But the fact that it's possible to restore mobility, flexibility in the hands, that's really great. It really works. But again, the sooner you start, the better. I always get really upset, of course, when I see people who are suffering, struggling, having their joints twisted, and they feel like nothing can be changed anymore, that nothing can be done. The earlier you start working on this, the better. You shouldn't wait until everything just gets twisted up. Oh, about a lick, about weather sensitivity. Yes, about weather sensitivity. You're still young. Weather sensitivity. Look, weather sensitivity, of course, develops with age, when a person already has a lot of inflammatory processes inside, and the organs react to changes in the environment. Right. So that doesn't mean it has to be that way. But there's this thing. But when a young man or a young woman develops weather sensitivity, there are a few factors at play. First, there are some changes in nature that I react to, and it seems to me that it's nature, or rather, not nature, but the weather, yeah. But in reality, something is happening in life. Say, I had a fight with my boyfriend. I get overwhelmed, and I'm like, well, it's just the clouds today or something, right? Or something happened at work. I get overwhelmed. Oh, the weather's weird again today. Something's off, or something like that. So, our brain likes to link, what's happening to what we want. But in reality, there's a specific trigger in life that throws you off balance. So the first thing is, you need to learn how to work with these triggers. I know you're currently in the test drive week, and later, in the basics, we go further and break down these triggers. The second point, if the weather really is a trigger that reminds you of something bad, it's usually a specific kind of weather, like heavy rain or heavy snow. For example, there was a heavy rain, and that's when our dad left us. And now every time there's heavy rain, I feel bad, and I don't even know why. I don't even remember anymore that it was when Dad left us. So basically, my body recorded some episode from my life, but it has to be something intense. In other words, it has to be something that can really be reproduced. The next point is that I react to changes in the environment because I have a lot of inflammation going on inside me. The inflammation is connected to the fact that I don't feel safe. I have a kidney conflict. I have swelling, yes. And well, this is more of a physiological process. I need to restore my sense of safety. This is something that comes up often. Write down what resonated with you. Heartburn appeared. I've talked about heartburn before, yes. Here, Olechka writes, heartburn appeared when I started a new job. I didn't like it. I left in February, but the heartburn stayed. I understood that it was connected to work. Now it's clear. I'm still holding a grudge against them. Exactly. Yes. So why did I leave my job but the heartburn stayed? Hey, where's the justice in this world? Exactly. The feelings are still there. The injustice is still there. And maybe my perception of that job was just a trigger from my own life. So, Olechka, practice number 3, where we revisit betraying ourselves on a test drive, will be released on Friday. And it's written just for you. You definitely need to do it. Got it? Alright, questions. Let's spend another 5 minutes going over things. Are you having fun with me? Is it good? Do you like it? Is what Vadym is saying interesting? Drop a plus sign, a smiley, say, Vadym is awesome. Or write, I don't get anything, nothing's interesting, I won't come again. Heh. Yeah. A polyp was removed from the uterus, and 7 years later it appeared again. What should we work on? A polyp in the uterus, right? Do you mean the mucous membrane, or where exactly? The mucous membrane. Probably the very first thing I would mention is resentment. It's really resentment towards a man. Somewhere, it's really resentment towards a man. It could be towards your father, towards your greatest love. There's some kind of rejection, because very often that's exactly why polyps form, specifically in the uterus. And the second thing is the sense of safety. Where did you lose it? Why do I now feel unsafe around a man? Again, we're talking about relationships, about parenthood. And third, where did I lose myself as a woman? Again, where did I betray or hurt myself? So, that's what our third lesson in the test drive will be about. Yes, again, where we betrayed ourselves, where we hurt ourselves. This will be both a diagnosis and a deep dive for us. Access is only for a week. No, actually, you'll have access for longer. But the deep work lasts a week, and you'll have a mentor. So, let's say you join today. It doesn't matter if it's today or tomorrow. You'll still get 7 days of support from a mentor who will guide and help you. Yes, there will be 3 lectures, 3 psycho techniques, and we'll also have a webinar where we'll create a map of your health. The webinar will last 2 to 3 hours. It's really. And all of this comes for just 2,999 rubles. That's just fantastic, right? I mean, this amount of money won't solve all your life's problems. Not at all. But it can triple your health, because you'll start to understand what's happening inside you. This is a very important point, friends. Our life is always testing us, whether we're taking any steps or just standing still. You can always just read something, do some research, or join some other live streams. Now, I'm not judging anyone, but there's a group of people who say, "Oh, Vadym, I listened to something about psychosomatics, and then I came to you. What do you think?" And these people, they're always listeners, always just listening. But just by listening, nothing will change, because psychosomatics isn't about theory or hypotheses. It's about practice. I'm giving you examples here. Let's say we take 10 women with uterine fibroids, and each of them will have a different story, and I'll tell you these stories. But what, do these stories make you feel anything? Do they really affect you? Or how about you? How do you feel about it? So, for example, you realize at work, let's say Oliseka realized it, right? But she didn't work through it, didn't accept it. So what is she supposed to do with that now? Is she supposed to just go to bed with it now? Is she going to wake up in the morning and say, "That's it, I love everyone, I've forgiven everyone, and that's it. I won't have heartburn anymore"? Of course not. Just because you realize something, absolutely nothing will change. You have to relive it, let go of the feeling. And to let it go, you need to know how to do it. And sometimes you need support. That's why, when you come to a test drive for as little as 2,000 rubles, you're already starting to change. So instead of watching 10 live streams, if you just spend a week working on yourself and do 3 practices, you'll see massive changes in your life. Do you agree? Right. Someone mentioned the trigeminal nerve here. We actually have a case where a woman had trigeminal nerve inflammation. Her whole face was twisted. She worked on herself. She had resentment, complaints. So, the trigeminal nerve is like a slap in the face, like a betrayal. And she worked on herself, and her face completely recovered. There are some really amazing cases like that. Here's another story about the trigeminal nerve. A girl found out. Well, didn't find out. So, this girl, she lives with her husband. So, everything seems to be fine between them, but they just don't love each other. Well, at least she doesn't love him. And so, she had a little affair, and she cheated on him. Well, that's just how it happened. And she falls into a deep sense of guilt. And it's as if she's giving herself a slap in the face as self-punishment. Her trigeminal nerve gets triggered. She develops trigeminal neuralgia. Her face becomes distorted. But she keeps living in this state, thinking, "I deserve this." It's a kind of self-punishment. I'm such a bad person. I cheated on him, after all. But the thing is, your relationship was already falling apart at the seams. And not even for no reason. She kind of forgot about that, right? Right. Angiomas, yes, as Natalia writes. But I would ask here, why do angiomas bother you? Usually, angiomas don't cause any discomfort. Why touch them? Why do you want to work with them? How do I join the test drive? There's a link in the Telegram channel, guys. I'll also ask the team to repost it now. You just go in. Our first lesson is already out today. You can already watch the lecture and the practice. Tomorrow, a curator will contact you and you'll start working through it. If we're talking about the Instagram channel, there's a link in the profile bio. If you get confused for any reason, just right now, the team will highlight it for you and respond. Alright, let me tell you more about intervertebral hernia. Intervertebral hernia. What could be the causes? The first cause, it could be a consequence. Especially if there is a MMO, surgeries, removal of the cesarean section, appendix removal, any abdominal surgeries. They affect the position of the vertebrae in the lumbar region. So that's the first possible cause. The second point, MMM, it could be weakness of the pelvic floor because the diaphragm is overstrained, meaning the person is under chronic stress. Next point. If we're talking about psychosomatics, it's a conflict of powerlessness. I couldn't handle it. I failed, plus a sense of guilt. Right. And so, the lower back is exactly that. Something serious, deep, where I blame myself for something, like I couldn't do it. For example, a man who couldn't, say, find a good clinic for his mother's treatment. And then blaming yourself, thinking you should have done better, should have worked less, and now your mother is gone. Or, for example, a woman whose child got sick, and she's like, it's all my fault. Even though it's not her fault at all. But she just has this, let's say, tendency toward guilt, right? She falls into it. So, different people have different circumstances where they didn't manage to cope with something, and they blame themselves. So, Elena, what do you blame yourself for? Where do you feel like you didn't manage? Where do you have this kind of feeling? Write it down. And in our test drive, the first lecture we'll have, which is already out today, is feeling your body. So you'll immediately feel where there's powerlessness, where there's guilt towards yourself, right? Then there will be a meeting with yourself. That will be our practice, our lesson on Wednesday. You'll already understand where you're stuck and why you're stuck there. And then the processing. So it's better to work through it once than to just listen many times, right? There you go. There you go. Thank you. She fell and injured her spine. Let's break it down. Alia brought up a really interesting topic. It would seem a person fell and broke their spine. Is there psychosomatics involved here, or is it just a coincidence? The first thing I'd probably pay attention to, any injury at all, like I'm telling you, right, when it just happens out of nowhere, the first thing is, it's an opportunity to slow down. Maybe you're getting yourself into some kind of mess in life. Something's going on in your life. This actually happens really often. You work with people, they tell you their stories, and some injury has grounded them. So, they were getting into something they shouldn't have, and otherwise could have really messed things up. So their body, well, this is more of a psychological aspect. The second aspect is the kind of self-punishment. Punishing yourself for something in your life. I can't forgive myself. That's exactly the feeling of deep guilt, right? Wanting to punish yourself. That's the second state that can happen. The third state that can happen. So, it might seem like I just fell, but suddenly, everything broke really badly, right? And it could be that, in reality, I was in a state of active self-devaluation conflict. When I felt powerless, you know, and I couldn't cope. So I had lost my sense of self-worth, and that's why it just so happened that I fell, and it was like I had no support inside. So, if we're talking about support, does that make sense? These are three very common, widespread scenarios. Irina writes, how do you deal with excessive sweating? Excessive sweating means, again, that I don't feel safe right now, yes, if we're talking about the psychological side of things. If we're talking about the neurotic, about neurology, then most likely you just have tension in your spine, tension in your diaphragm, which is why the nerves are being pinched, and that's why your autonomic nervous system is reacting this way. But they're not tense for no reason. It's because you're in a state of chronic stress. Today we release the practice, and basically, you need to do it to understand what you're living in, to help you relax. Do this practice, and you'll already start feeling much better. Yes. Alright, friends, thank you all. Thank you for today's broadcast. I'm sure you learned a lot of useful and interesting things today. If I didn't answer any of your questions, be sure to write to me in direct messages or in the Telegram channel. My team and I will try to go through everything and answer all your questions in the next couple of days. Once again, I'd like to remind you, it's test drive week. I only do this once a year. So if you miss it now, well, chances are you'll have to wait a whole year to join, because I won't be running it again this year. I have other events planned. And the topic is really awesome. You get 3 lectures and 3 psycho techniques for just 2,000 rubles. For a whole week, a curator will guide you, help you work through your feelings, and answer your questions. You'll also get a powerful 2 to 3 hour webinar. This offer is really worth taking the time for yourself and giving yourself some attention. After all, this is basically the first step. The first step toward accepting yourself, loving yourself. People often ask, how do you learn to love yourself? Like, go get a massage, read some books? No, that's not it. Just choose yourself. If you have some kind of pain, psychological or physical, come and sort it out, with Vadym. If you want to continue, you can. If you don't have to. It's totally up to you. But even that will already change how you feel. Believe me, these lectures will let you see yourself from the outside. Yeah. Thank you. I look good. Thank you, Ekaterina. Wishing everyone peace, love, and good health.